All right, everyone. It is the All In Podcast, show number 31. Welcome, guys, to our show. I'm David Morse, your host, CEO and team leader of Keller Williams Arizona Realty, with my co-host Joe Quattrucci, the director of growth for the Kristen Cole Real Estate Network. And on our show today, we are excited to bring to you the one and only. He goes by his first name. That's when you know you've made it, Joe.
You only need one name.
Haro. Haro, how's it going, man?
It's great, man.
Well, thanks so much for being with us. And
I'm like Cher or Prince or yeah.
Exactly. Well, dude, Joe, you always ask the first question. So what am I doing?
Yeah. Haro, give our listeners kind of a high level overview, big picture of what it is that you do. What business are you in?
I run a residential real estate sales business. That is the primary thing that I'm involved in and gets most of my attention and time and provides most of my income. But I'm also involved in several other businesses. I have lots of rental properties, involved in a couple of franchises. And a crazy cool thing that's afforded by my company Keller Williams, called Profit Share.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So, dude, as we do with all of our guests, I want you first to kind of take us back to, whether you're high school, college, later in your career. I mean, whenever it was, what got you into real estate?
It's a really cool story. So I hope, at least I think it's cool. And I guess we always think stories about ourselves are cool, but maybe
we'll let the audience be the judge, right?
That's right. That's right. Please clap if you like it. So I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, to basically a single mother. And my sales career started. It was a really cool journey. I just look back at life, and I'm a man of faith, and to me, it's just like God put all this together because I couldn't have done it. So broken family, pretty not at all well-to-do. Dad was an immigrant, and they got divorced when I was 6. Fast forward, I graduated from high school. My mother made some really sacrifices to send me to a really good private Christian boarding school, which was transformative for me because I was going the wrong direction as a middle schooler. And she made that sacrifice, and she said, hey, if you're going to go to college, I can't pay for it. So you're going to have to figure that out on your own. And the summer after my senior year of high school, I actually went to work in Alaska, and worked in a fish cannery the entire summer, which was the best money I could have made at that time of jobs that I was aware of, and still was $6.50 an hour plus 40 hours overtime a week. So I was able to save some. Came out of the summer, didn't have enough for my first semester. Came down to South Carolina to go to college, paid what I could, and then loans, and worked on campus to figure out the rest. And one fall day, me and my buddy were walking down the walkway on our way to dinner, and we stopped. One day, if I'm going to write a book, there's going to be a chapter called Two Squirrels. Because for some reason, I have this vivid memory. We stopped and we watched these 2 squirrels just fighting with each other in the lawn. And because we stopped, a guy from my hall caught up with us. And he's like, hey, can I join you guys for dinner? Sure. So we kept walking. He bumps into a girl he knew from previous year, and this is fall, and they haven't caught up yet. So they start talking, how's your summer? And she mentions this summer job where she's made $14,000 the previous summer. Now, this is 1995. And room, board, and tuition, that makes me old. There are people getting into real estate now that were born in the 2000s. I can't even. That's just not.
I just interviewed one right before this.
Yeah, it isn't. It is not okay. So $14,000 room, board, and tuition where I was going to school was $8,000. I was like, man, I got one question: is it legal?
Right.
So it turns out she had done an internship for a publishing company out of Nashville, Tennessee called Thomas Nelson Publishers, which is it's unfamiliar. At one point, they were the largest Bible publisher in the world. I don't know if they're still that, but they did a lot of other things. I mean, they published Maxwell books and Lucado books. So they had some personal development and leadership division stuff that they did, and Adventures in Odyssey DVDs. Some of us remember those from growing up. VeggieTales. At one point, they owned VeggieTales. Anyway, so they had this college program. It was this sales internship where it was like you would go to 1 week sales school in Nashville, Tennessee, where headquarters was. And then you and anyone else from your university and other universities that were part of your sales organization would get assigned to one part of the country. And you'd be like, all right, this county is you, and you'd have 2 or 3 roommates and you're going to live in this county, and go door to door and sell these educational books and Bibles. And so I sat through the information session. I think it was that night or maybe the following night. And I was like, this is crazy, but it's clear they have a system. Here's this live human that made $14,000 last summer. I could do at least as good as she did. She's got nothing special. So I was like, all right, sign me up. So that summer I went out, and the expectation was 80 hours a week, 6 days a week from 8 in the morning to 9:30 at night. And that you would memorize a sales talk and present it 20 times a day, going door to door. And I followed the system. Both of my roommates by week 6 had pretty much quit and were partying. And I just kept going. And at the end of the summer, I looked down and I had created $10,000 in commissions. And after the expenses for the summer, I had $8,000 to my name that would obviously cover an entire school year. So that was my first introduction to sales, and I fell in love with it then.
Teeth on you were a traveling Bible salesman and leadership book salesman.
Yeah,
80 hours a week.
Go figure. Not leadership books. There's educational books and Bibles. Okay. Yeah, so that was it. That was summer number 1. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to skip over, but we fast forward to the year 2000. I graduate from Clemson with an economics degree in 4.0. I get my I was going to. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I was actually looking at being a snowboard instructor in the West, and or being a flight attendant so I could travel, because I had done two study abroad trips, one to Russia and one to Chile, and I just loved seeing the world. That was maybe the most, other than selling books door to door, is the second most valuable thing I did in my college years was going overseas. And doing the study abroad trips. The third most valuable thing I did was taking classes. That was supposed to be third. Thank you for laughing. It took you a second.
Yeah. I got it.
It truly. Anyway, we could talk about that for a long time. So I graduate, I'm heading towards graduation, and I'm seeing this girl, and she's like, "You're gonna do what?" I was like, yeah, I really want to I love snowboarding. I want to be a snowboard instructor. She's like, you've got a 4.0 in economics from Clemson. You should be doing something better with your life. And I was like, well, what would you suggest? And she's like, have you ever thought about investment banking or management consulting? I was like, I've never even heard of that. So I started doing some research. I was like, oh man, these are legit prestigious careers. And can make a lot of money. So I got kind of excited, and I started networking, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt really proud because I landed a investment banking job with Bank of America Securities in Chicago that year. So this is 2001 now. And I had graduated in December of 2000. I started in April. I'll spare the details, but by midsummer, I got fired from my first job. And that was a really hard pill to swallow, because I was just really proud of myself, and that was the first time my dad had expressed his pride in me. And I got fired. I was totally down and out after that. And so let me back up. That job, to our knowledge, and Clemson keeps data on this stuff, I had the highest offer of any graduating senior the semester that I graduated. A $55,000 starting offer with a $10,000 signing bonus in 2001. And get fired, and now I'm looking for a new job. And this was right when a bunch of stuff was happening in the market, so all the investment banks were pulling back from adding people, and I just kept hitting wall after wall. So finally, I did land a job through a friend I played recreational soccer with at the Chicago Board of Trade as an assistant trader, making exactly half what I had been making just a few weeks before. So that was a sucker punch and a real like coming of age moment. Learned a lot through that. Long story short, I worked there for 9 more months, and I realized something that my sales manager from the book business had taught me. He said, in life, you need to be really careful who you work with because you will become like the people you're surrounded by. And I was like, that had just rung in my head. And as I looked, one of the things that was really important to me for my career became important to me is that I would make a lot of money. Because as a kid, we were fairly poor, and dad never really paid his child support. Mom had struggles holding down jobs, and I would always wear like hand me down like Goodwill clothes, and I'd totally get made fun of at school. So I just like that was just seared into my head, and I'm like never gonna struggle with money. So the job I had though as an assistant trader was a good path to making good money because the traders I did work for, these were guys that were they were netting $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and I was like, I want that. But what I realized I didn't want was who they were as people. I did not want to become like who they were as people. And so I had the presence of mind at that time to say, what was really good is in the book business, I was surrounded by some really good people and some really good leadership and people I wanted to become like. So I called my old sales manager back and went back to work in that business. So that summer, 2002, I went back. I sold books for the summer, and I told him, I said, this summer, I have a dream I want to chase. I want to make as much money as I can, and then I want to go live in Armenia because I'm Armenian, never been to the country. I'd grown up speaking the language. My parents were both Armenian, and I want to go to the country and see it. And so I did really well that summer, went to Armenia, was thinking about staying in Armenia, but eventually chose to come back. Went back to work for him. And so from 2003 to 2008, I sold books every summer, but through the school years, I was a full-time recruiter. So I was recruiting at 4 campuses in South Carolina. And I would take out sales teams. I'd make an override on their production. During that period, I also got my master's degree in economics. I was like, well, if I want to be on campus recruiting all the time, I might as well take some classes and get another degree. And then in 2004, I got introduced to my wife. By 2005, we were engaged. In 2006, we were married. So I finished my master's degree in 2006. Oh, that's another funny story. I was going to get a PhD, but I pretty much got asked to leave the graduate.
Haro, that's coming up as a kind of a theme here. What in the world?
And I ain't done yet. There's still more. Turns out I'm not a great employee. So what was I going to say? 2006, we get married. So 2007, my wife, she comes to sales school with me, and we go to where the company assigns us for the summer, and it's hunky-dory and it's good. And then 2008 comes, and we have our first baby in February, but then we, pack up all our stuff with a 4-month-old, and we go out and go to sales school and go to where the company sends us for the summer. And at the end of that summer, 2008, I said, you know what, this is, first of all, financially, it hadn't gotten to where I wanted it to be yet. I had visions for it to be a national organization, and I so loved the experience and what it did for me, and then what it did for the people that I worked with. Like, you just think about a college student they just come in, they walk away with so much confidence after tackling a beast like that. It was just a real transformative experience for people that did it. And so I was passionate about it. But 2008, I was like, you know what? This is not where I need to be. I have a family now, and I think we were pregnant with our second. And so tapped the brakes on that and said, all right, what's next? So I took some time off. I did some odd jobs with some friends. I had a friend at a new company and did some sales for him. But I was biding time. Just what am I going to do next? What's the next thing I can put my hand to? And I took some advice and interviewed people in about 8 different sales careers: medical device sales, pharmaceutical sales, life insurance, property and casualty insurance, commercial real estate, residential real estate, and then like securities brokerage like Edward Jones, Merrill Lynch, that kind of thing. And one by one, I eliminated them. Like pharmaceutical, nowhere near the opportunities that used to exist based on the friends that I talked to that had been in the business. Medical device sales, my sister was a nurse, introduced me to this lady who made like $350,000 a year selling spine implants. And I was like, that'd be great. Let's do that. So I took her to lunch. She was like, yeah, it sounds like you would do really well at this. You have some really great experience. And she's like, so what you would do is you'd probably start with the company training program. You'd shadow me for a couple of months, 6 months, whatever. And then the company would pick a city for you to go to. And that's where you would have your sales territory. I was like, yeah, time out. No company's picking for me where I live. I'm going to pick that for myself. So that didn't work. And then pretty much life insurance, property and casualty insurance, and the brokerage, securities brokerage business all had good financial upside slowly. So I'm an impatient person and I was not interested in slow. I needed to make money now. Commercial real estate was kind of in doldrums at that time. It was like, yes, there's big paychecks. They're few and far between. And the deals take 6 to 12 months to close. And I was just like, gosh. And interestingly, this is how God does things. My dad had been in real estate. So I had been exposed to real estate as a kid. Now, he never did really well. He had problems with alcohol, but he had been in real estate. And I remember weekends when I'd visit and he'd have clients and he'd flip through the MLS book with them. Meanwhile, I had the opportunity at that age to get my first exposure to like Tony Robbins. So I'd watch Tony Robbins VHSs on the company training room on on a TV that was like 30 inches thick.
Nice.
With the tape. So that was my dad. So that had been there. 2 years previous to this point, a friend of mine from college had given me this red book. It looks a little bit like this. And you may have seen it before.
Yeah, we know that
it
one.
is. There it is.
I think it might be on the shelf above your head, David.
I think it is. Yeah. So Haro's referring to the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. If people aren't picking
That's
that
right.
up.
So, and I think it was December of 2007. So December was a really slow time in recruiting college kids, right? They're doing final exams and they're going home. So I read that book and I actually took the real estate class just for just curiosity. And I read the book and I was like, gosh, if someone would do that would work. That's a really good model. So I was kind of intrigued. My father-in-law, he retired about 5 or 6 years ago, but had spent 40 years in real estate in Vancouver, British Columbia. And he would come to visit us and hear me pounding the phones, calling kids on the president's list and dean's list about coming to check out an internship where they would work 80 hours a week during the summer selling books door to door away from home. And he's like, man, if he can do that, like imagine if he did that in real estate, you guys would make a whole lot more money. And I wasn't in a place to listen, and he mostly said it to my wife, not directly to me. So there was that, and then I'd already bought 2 of my investment properties. My mother had given me Rich Dad, Poor Dad at some point in high school, and I read it, and I was like, yep, I definitely want to be. And I don't know if cash flow quadrant is introduced in that book or not, but somehow I got interested in that. And I said, I definitely want to be on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. Like in a world of choices, I can be on the left side or I can be on the right side. I think I like the right side better.
Right.
So I'd already bought my first 2 investment properties. And then the same guy, now we're into 2009, right? Like this is getting to the bottom of the worst real estate market that anyone alive remembers. Same guy reaches out to me and says, hey, Haro, we have more leads than we can handle for our team. Do you know anyone that would like to talk about a career in real estate? And I said, well, I've been thinking about it, so why don't we get together? So we got together in May of 2009. I started as a buyer's agent on a team here in Greenville. There was probably 7 or 8 agents on the team at that point. And the first 12 months, I sold 33 homes to become number 1 agent on the team. The crazy thing was people were like, wow, you did that in 2009. I'll tell you, it was for me at that point. Now I already had a fair amount of confidence, but if you remember, if you picture my previous career, you're knocking on a door, someone answers the door. They've never seen me before. They've never heard of my products. They've never heard of our company. And then there's this Middle Eastern looking guy standing on the front doorstep asking to come inside to make a presentation. Like, But when I joined the team,
Not
when I joined the team, they handed me a phone and they said, "This is the money phone. And when this phone rings, that's someone calling on one of our listings. And when it buzzes, that is someone registering on our website. They'll have the phone number and email there." I was like, time out. Are you saying they call us? Like they get in touch with us?
This is great.
This is like shooting fish in a barrel. So I just was off to the races. And I really from the beginning, I recognized that this is just about a schedule. So I showed up every day at 8, worked till 6 or 7, Monday through Friday, oftentimes on Saturday. And back then, I don't do this as much now. In fact, I don't do it at all now. But back then, I mean, I was hungry. I was young. I had 2 kids. I would call every Sunday night from 6 to 8. I called it magic hour because everyone was chill. They had relaxed all weekend. Their kids weren't bothering them. Like if they were a lead or a prospect, they were more apt to answer the phone, and it was more likely to be a positive conversation because of the lack of background noise, if you will, in their life and in their house, frankly. So 33 houses. By the end of that year, me and the owner of the team were having conversations, 12 months. By the end of the 12 months, we're having conversations about me becoming the sales manager for the team. And that conversation took a few months. And then in August of 2010, I walked into, and by the way, you asked about how I got into real estate. I'm going to stop soon because and you can feel free to, I can either continue this story and bring you all the way up to the present, or we can stop and ask questions. But in August of 2010, I walked into a meeting that I thought was us inking the paper about me becoming sales manager for the team. And what it was our final conversation about my employment there. So I was let go that day. To this day, I'm not 100% clear on what the reasons were. I have my guesses, and it's okay. I'm actually the guy that didn't want to start my own team. I actually wanted to stay on a team, and as long as I could hit my financial goals within someone else's structure, I really didn't care if it was my name on the door or not.
Interesting.
So
well, I do want to pick up on just a couple things because now it's happened a few times, and I just want to ask, what was it inside of you that caused you not to give up? Like when you do have to be riding high when you graduate Clemson 4.0 and you land the highest paying job, and then in a matter of months you get fired.
Yeah.
Then you sell 33 homes. You're the number one salesperson. You think it's heading towards this big position of glory on this team, and then you part ways. Why didn't you give up?
Yeah, I think that's kind of it's interesting. It's as I've reflected on even our history as Armenians, and then my personal history. Armenians are a people group that has just survived. Like being a survivor is what a good way to describe the Armenian people. I could go deeper into that, but for me personally, I think the thing for me was that I had no backup options. I didn't come from a strong family, so there wasn't oh, come back home, we'll take care of you. There's never any of that. There was never going to be any money from dad. There was never going to be any money from mom. There just wasn't. I didn't even really go home for Christmases and Thanksgivings after leaving from high school. So there just wasn't backup. If something was going to happen in my life, it was on me. And how can I translate that for people? I think one of the things that really hurts people in this business is that they have a back door. I didn't have the luxury of having a back door or a second option. If something was going to happen for me or my now, in the real estate business, wife and 2 kids, it was on me. And so I just kept going, and confidence was a big thing too. I'll tell you, the book business really built a lot of confidence.
I want to pick up on that because I think you're making a really excellent point about people kind of having a fallback and being comfortable with, well, if I don't make any sales this month or this year, that's not ideal. But in reality, I know I'm still going to be able to eat and sleep with a roof over my head because I have family, I have reserves, I have whatever. And what I hear you saying is reminds me of this concept of when you want to succeed at something, you've got to burn the boats. You've got to leave yourself no other option. And you didn't even have to burn the boats because they weren't even there to begin with. So you're chugging along knowing that I've got to create something for myself. Otherwise, there's nothing to fall back to.
Well, there's a really interesting story that happens right here, Thanksgiving of 2010. So remember, I'm fired in August. I had sold 22 houses in 2010 through the time I got removed from the team. And then I had another 6 closings from August to December. And those 6, though, were leads from the team. So the team still got their cut. And so I'm making very little. I have expenses. By Thanksgiving of 2010, I took a day off and I was like, I just looked at our finances and I looked at my wife and I said, this is a really encouraging Thanksgiving conversation. I said, we're $50,000 in debt. And this isn't mortgages. This is student loans, credit cards. I had made one bad investment on my credit card. That's always dumb to do.
Oh, wow.
Of $10,000 and never got the money back from the guy that was supposed to pay me back. So there's just a bunch of stuff. And I said, I got us in this mess. I need to get us out. And I said, it was interesting. We had some dear friends over for dinner that night, and they said, and they're also Christians and people of faith, and they challenged us. And I said, do you guys pray together? I was like, no, we don't. I said, that'd be a really good thing to do, wouldn't it? Because we were kind of sharing the situation we were in. So that really started a habit for us of as a couple spending time in prayer together on a consistent basis. And that's been really powerful for our relationship. So just some beautiful things happen. But $50,000 in debt, again, like you said, no boats. In fact, the boats I did have that were burned, I still owed money on. Right?
Yeah, right.
You're in a really dire situation here.
Yeah. But here's another part of the story. This goes back to the confidence thing, which in that period, I hired a coach and my first assistant. And because I just had confidence that if I would work consistently and make the calls consistently, that the sales would come. And frankly, my hack at that point was I'm just going to throw as many hours as it takes to get here. And the beautiful thing about the real estate market back then was nobody was in it. So the available transactions per agent were really high. So everyone had quit because they were all, they had all gotten fattened up in 2006, 2007. And by 08, 09, 2010, 2011, I got into the business, everyone was bitching about, pardon my French, just about how bad things were. And to give you perspective, I understand why they said that. Like this year, our MLS will have 15,000 houses that close. That's 30,000 available sides. Back then, it was 6,000 closings, so that's 12,000 available sides. In 2006, I think it was 11,000. So it had dropped off tremendously. However, me coming into the business, I was like, wait, there's 6,000 transactions, 12,000 available sides. If I had 1% of that, I would be a very happy and wealthy man. So that was kind of my perspective. Is like, while all these people complain, I see opportunity. And I overheard someone at that time, the sales coach that the guy I was working for had hired for the company. He said, market share is on sale right now. And I was like, market share is on sale. And I know enough from the little bit of investing work I've done, like when everyone's running away from something, that's the time to look at it. And so I was like, market share is on sale. What he means is everyone's getting out. This is the time to get in. So it turned out to be just again, I said earlier, like you can't I just look at my life and I'm like, this has been orchestrated by someone, not me. Because it's been a fantastic ride. So you asked why I didn't quit. That was a really long answer, but hopefully it colored in some context.
No, it definitely does. And one of the things I didn't realize, even talking before, I didn't realize how late how recently really you got into real estate. I mean, so it's been about 10 years?
Yeah. I still feel new.
Yeah. Yeah. So take us up to the present time. Like what will the Haro Group close this year? What are you projecting? And then I want to take the conversation for a few minutes into a topic that you're so good at because it's part of your story over the past 3 years. So where are you now? Answer that. And then let's talk about profitability because it's a topic that we really haven't spent a lot of time on our podcast talking about. And it's something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of a run up to get us to where we are today. And so that's just a picture of, in 2012, I hired my first full-time assistant. By the middle of that year, there was a buyer agent. By the end of that year, there was we had 2 admin people and then me and a buyer agent. That year, we sold 50 homes. And I'm just going to give you a quick run through. The next year we sold 124. The next year we sold 185, 258, 412. And then in 2017, we sold 478 homes for just under $100 million in real estate, generated about $2.8 million in revenue, $2.9 million. And in 2016, I got the bright idea that I think a lot of young entrepreneurs get is, hey, I'm good at this. Maybe I should launch this. So I had the opportunity to launch a Keller Williams franchise here locally. So I took I was the leading tip of that, the leading edge of the sphere, and really the visionary and person that put the energy behind making that happen. And I was like, I'll get this done in 6 months. It took closer to 21. And I had a team member, a general manager running the business while I was launching the market center. And in late 2017, we finally launched. We sold 478 homes that year, 96 million. Launched the office. Things were flying high. Now, at that time, I actually ended up getting out of business with my general manager, but he was my partner, so he became the operating partner of the franchise, and I stepped back into the business to run the business. And as I stepped back into the business to run the business, I realized, man, there's a lot of stuff that needs work here. I'm not sure of what all it is or even how to handle it. And I ended up hiring, I think by the end of that year, I had 3 coaches to help me navigate, which was like, if you want to use an analogy of a investment property, like you look at the house and you're like, is this a tear down or a remodel? And that was the question I was asking myself, is this a tear down or a remodel? And we decided on remodel. And I've not turned around any other companies in my life before. So I started down this path of turning things around. And in 17, we had done about $2.9 million in sales, and profits were about $300,000, which is roughly 10% margin, which I'm assuming this is mostly real estate industry people that listen to this, but there may be other people. 10% margin is pretty low for our industry, for a business like ours. And so that was an issue. And then as I stepped in the business, there's just so much drama and inefficiency and chaos. And I realized that some things needed to change. So we started going down this path of change. And we started making changes in 2018 after reading the book Traction and having several friends who have implemented the EOS system that's in the book Traction. We hired an implementer that helped us kind of build in this infrastructure of a meeting rhythm and how to set quarterly rocks and how to have a clearly communicated vision, and a number of, if you've never read the book, I'd highly recommend reading it. We've implemented, I would say 80% of the system, and we're working towards getting to 100%. So we started doing that, and we started making changes, and we got out of business. People we didn't do business with them, mostly on the sales side, and that hurt revenue. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to mess with expenses. I'm going to make sure our operations team is strong and we're stable so that the salespeople who are still here, they have a good foundation, and we'll just go hire new salespeople because we had been really successful at just bringing on sales and growing sales in the past. So that was most of 2018. And interestingly, in 2018, we lost $50,000 on about $2.5 or $6 million in revenue.
Wow.
But I was okay with that because we were making the right moves and we were turning the ship around. 2019, we got into it, and this is our year. We're going to come out of the morass and fly again. Put some wrong people in some roles. Not bad people, really good people, just wrong roles, things that weren't equipped for. And we tried to turn the sales around, and by August, it was clear to me that well, a number of things happened. I read Profit First and got a real education on, I was actually thinking the wrong way about the business, and that was clarified even more later when I read earlier this year, The Road Less Stupid by
Cunningham.
Keith Cunningham. I was gonna say Rick Cunningham, but Rick Cunningham's an OP in Keller Williams. Keith Cunningham is the author. Yes, and that was just like, you don't sell your way out of a poor expense structure. Like, you've got to right size expenses for where your revenues are. And I had to sit down with a friend of mine, a mentor in Keller Williams, and he said, Haro, you don't have a revenue problem. Your company creates more revenue than 99% of realtors and real estate teams out there. You don't have a revenue problem. You got an expense problem. I was like, because I was like pounding on revenue. We got to grow revenue. They're like, you don't have a revenue issue. Your revenue is good. It's not as high as it once was, but it's good. You just need to get your expenses in control. And I was like, yeah, okay. So then I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a coach, and took a class from another person that is now my coach, Jeannie Osnes, and the class was called Profit Camp, and it was based on the book Profit First. And it just became really clear to me that we had some tough choices to make. And so by the end of the year, it was apparent that we needed to make layoffs. So late 2019, actually December 3rd, we laid off 4 people, mostly in management roles in the company. And that was the hardest day of my professional life by a mile, maybe several. But I'll tell you, the next morning, I woke up with a lightness and a joy of now there's a path. Now there's a path to bringing happiness back, frankly, because I was a cranky bitch for a year. Because we have a leadership meeting every Monday at 2:30. And every one of those always sucked because we were always behind and we were always worried about, are we going to make money this month or lose money this month? And that was just an awful place. And I have to own that. Like, I created the conditions that created the company that was the problem in. Unfortunately, the only solve was we had to cut expenses, and the biggest expenses in a business are salaries and rent. And cutting salaries was one of the big ways to do that. So that happened. And we had to cut a lot of other expenses too. So that was also part of it. I'm just talking about the more emotional part, which was the salaries and saying goodbye to people. And then coming to this year, and this year's been amazing. I mean, it's 2019, first half of 2019, we had lost $600 or so in the first half of 2019. In the first half of 2020, we made $182,000. So it was like this. Wow. 10,000% increase. I don't remember the exact number in profits.
We'll go with 10,000.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the crazy thing is, again, COVID hits, right? And then there's this thing called PPP, and we had no idea what was going to happen with the business. So we applied. We got the full amount of PPP, and so that just went straight into reserves. And by God's grace, we've never had to use it. And now we have 6-7 months worth of reserves for the company. In addition to the profits that we created also went into reserves. So, this has just been a turnaround year. And, that brings us up to the present day where we're, really focusing a lot on, in the past, I put a lot of pressure on sales results, and I got reminded again, I'm reading this right now. And
great book,
Atomic Habits.
Yeah, one of the things it says in Atomic Habits, and I've heard it before, is you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And we've spent a lot of time this year. I still get like, let's just drive sales. But one of the things that Keith Cunningham talks a lot about in his book, and I've realized, like, I don't have the same level of energy as I did 10 years ago when I got into real estate. And if the business always has to rely on me throwing more time at it and more energy at it, Keith calls that a hand crank business. Like, you got to keep cranking. And what we're working towards is a business that has, in Millionaire Real Estate Agents, called Business D. Like, just momentum of the business carries and grows the business, and that's a result of good systems. So that's the thing we've spent a lot of time focusing on. 2018, we also got really clear on our core values. So we've gotten better and better at hiring to our core values. That sun is really beating down on my face. Hiring to our core values, reviewing people on core values, and firing people if they're not a core values match.
So let me ask you this, Haro, then, like, because as well as Joe and I do, that we are in a revenue infatuated industry, right?
That's
like
right.
The awards, the accolades, it all revolves. Everyone wants to drive the Porsche and say they're a $100 million producer. But I think, in this conversation, it's very thoughtful going through your story. Like, you and I know that top line revenue does not produce freedom. And if that doesn't produce freedom, then like, where's the happiness and joy and like doing any of this? Like a lot of that freedom results from creating a profit in a business. So if I'm an agent out there and I am one of those mega producers and I've been just on that hand crank business for years, like what is the first thing, like the first piece of advice you give to an agent like that when they say, okay, 2021 is going to be the year that I focus on profit?
My first thought when you were asking was make sure you have a great person leading your admin side of your business. That is something that we didn't have until about 2 years ago. And that individual, her name is Kayla. I think David, she came with me didn't she?
Yeah, I met Kayla.
Yeah. She has just been, it's interesting. We're such opposites on the Strengths Finder and on any of the behavioral assessments. But she's a very assertive, very driven individual. But she's skeptical where I'm optimistic. I'm highly responsive and move really fast to stuff. She's more methodical and strategic. Like there's just good yin and yang, if you will. So that would be my first thought is when you said, if I'm an agent and it's hand crank, like you've got to get someone in your world. And a lot of people start with that's the first hire in the book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And a lot of people try to be cheap with this hire, and being cheap is just not the way to do it. It's a serious investment. And when you get the right one, it pays off in spades. I couldn't do what I do without her. And her impact on our business. So that was my first thought. My second thought was, I didn't really do a good job in the beginning of understanding my P&L, and frankly, didn't have the right bookkeeper in place that helped me do that. Like one of the things I realized is I had hired an accountant to double as a bookkeeper, and they never really spent any time understanding the real estate business. So I really didn't have consistent books on a consistent basis, and I didn't put any pressure on that because there was money in the bank account, and that was enough. And over time, I came to realize, first of all, good CPAs are a rare breed. Most CPAs are history tellers, but I really wanted someone who could be my partner and look ahead into the future. So I ended up getting a good CPA and a good bookkeeper. So that's two very different things. The bookkeeper is kind of like the historian who tracks what happened and tracks down the missing pieces, and then the CPA obviously helps you with your taxes, et cetera, but someone that can help you plan for the future. So those would be two big pieces of advice I would give to that agent. And then, in the profit first, it's very simple. Like every check that, frankly, every morning I get up, I look at our deposits and I take 25% out and I put them in the profit account every morning. It's just what I do. That's not exactly the process in the book, but that's Haro's process.
Well, and what I like about all three of those things that you just said, Haro, is they're all very actionable, and none of them are rocket science. Like, anyone with the revenue can go out to make a hire on their operations and invest in their business. A bookkeeper, I love how you delineate between a bookkeeper and a CPA with the historian, the backwards focus and the forward focus. I think a lot of people do combine that because they don't know the difference there. So they just say, oh yeah, I got a CPA, or I got a bookkeeper, or why do I need that at that point? I have an app that tracks that. And delineating between those. And then just to your point about Profit First, and for any of our listeners who have not read Profit First, here at the brokerage, Joe, I'm taking our agent leadership council, which is composed of, agents that are doing $50 to $100 million in volume. And some of them have come and just said how radical and life-changing this book has been on their mentality in their business. And Haro, you're echoing that same exact thing. And so for any agent that's running a business, I don't care if you're just starting out or you are well into your business and think you have a well-oiled machine. If you have, whether you have a profit, I guess it's whether you have a profit issue or not, like read Profit First and at least take a look at the process that Mike introduces in that book, because it is revolutionary. I've seen it.
Yeah, it was just so life-giving. Like One of the things I'm passionate about is businesses need to be sustainable for all the stakeholders, and that's the community, the environment, the employees, the clients, and then it needs to be sustainable for the investor in the business. So I'm not one of these guys. Like, there's a statement that floats out there that says the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. That doesn't really resonate with me, and that's just really not the way I look at it. The purpose of business is to do two things. Number one is to provide quality goods and or services for the clients and the customers of that business. That is the purpose of the business. And then the second purpose of the business is to create a working environment where people are able to develop their God-given talents and skills and just take those to higher and higher levels of productivity and creativity. So that's the purpose of business. However, profit is a very important part of that. And I liken it to, and I actually learned this from a book I read called Why Business Matters to God. And I liken it to profit to a business is blood to a human body. Now, no one wakes up as a human and says, my job today is to create and circulate healthy blood. No one does that. Your job today is your job, your family, your kids. Right. But what I'm saying is, like, that's not what's the forefront of our minds. However, as we all know, if there's not healthy blood circulating in the body, nothing else that is important to that body to do or be will happen. So that is that is profit to the business. The business's purpose is to create goods and services that are quality, that serve the customer and the community, and to create an environment where people are able to develop their God-given skills and talents. Profit is what makes that all possible. So a business, and this is the other thing, is it has to be sustainable for the investor, because the investor, the person that started the business and put the money and human capital, or either the human capital or the financial capital into the business to start it, needs to get a return on that. Otherwise, they should pick up their capital and go elsewhere. So that's kind of the way I see it. And I'm rambling at this point. I'm not sure what question I'm answering, but that's some of the things hit me. That's just some of the things that I think about.
Yeah, a few minutes ago, you mentioned a quote from the book Atomic Habits that is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, rather you fall to the level of your systems. So my question for you is, what is your system around maintaining profitability to be top of mind? Are you auditing your expenses on a weekly basis, a monthly basis? How often are you going over P&L? Who are you doing that with?
Monthly. Our bookkeeper sends it to us. Me and Kayla have a monthly meeting. In fact, I think it's today for October. And we go over the books for the previous month and, just make sure that we're on pace for what we want to do. And then the other system I already mentioned, like literally every morning, checking the bank account. I have, I'll make this simple. So in my main bank, I have 3 accounts for the business. And one is the deposit account. So that's where everything goes in. Then there's operating expenses, and then there's profit. So every morning I go in, and whatever deposits we put in overnight or from the previous day, I just do 0.25 times the total of that, and I put that into the profit account. And then on the 15th and the 30th or thereabouts, I make the transfers for payroll. And I'll tell you something I thought about the other day. I think one of the most satisfying rhythms in business is the twice a month when I approve payroll. Is like, there's just something about being able to pay your people on, like, I'm just always thankful for that. I don't know. That just sounds crazy. Like, every time that happens and I make that transfer, I'm like, this is good. This is a good thing.
Well, and what a transformation, not to get you off track, but what a transformation from back in like 2017, 16, whenever it was, when every day was a drudgery to try and just wondering if you're going to break even. Right. And
yeah. And even back then though, it always felt good to know that our business has the cash to pay our people. Like, I know, like, on the one hand, I'm like, it's like, not everyone can say that. Not everyone has that opportunity. And it's just,
uh-oh. We're losing you there. We haven't had this since episode 1.
Yeah, we've been pretty good. I don't know if it's him or us.
I don't know. And I really don't know what to do.
I literally, if I transfer money, if I need money from that bank, I have to transfer it into my main bank. It takes 2 or 3 days to process. So it kind of makes it a little harder to access the money. So I don't have an issue with spending money I don't need to in the business, but it's really helped to build that a fairly large reserve at this point.
Definitely.
So, Haro, let me see if I can kind of summarize this for all our listeners. That's kind of what I do on this show. I take these concepts, I put them all together in sequential order.
The summarizer.
So what I'm hearing you say is, first and foremost, we have to maintain a certain awareness around our profitability. And if you're not sure how to do that, start with a book, for example, Profit First, and just know that profitability is important. And the way that you're going to get there is obviously through increased revenue and number 2, decreased expenses. And then create a system around it. So go hire yourself that bookkeeper, that CPA, even if it's somebody you have to spend a little more money on right now, they can end up saving you a lot of money in the long run. Then create a system around getting that P&L, getting that expense, all those expenses put together on some sort of regular basis, whether it's weekly, monthly, and meeting with your key players and talking about what are the expenses, what are our projections in revenue, where can we cut, where do we need to improve, et cetera.
Yep.
Then you take your money and you divide it between these separate accounts. So you have different accounts. In your case, all your deposits, all of your operations, and all of your profits. And so I guess what I want our listeners to hear through all this is, number 1, I agree with what you said, that you fall to the level of the systems that you implement. And number 2, profitability in a business is something that you have to do very intentionally. It's not just going to happen. You have to consciously think about, what does this need to look like? What accounts do I need to set up? What resources do I need to hire? And what system do we have to follow every month so that we can ensure profitability in our business?
That's right.
Awesome. I love it. I couldn't have summarized it better myself. So at this point, Haro, I want to transition us into the last segment of our show, which is 3, 2, 1 action. It's the same 3 questions we ask every single guest. And are you ready to be put on the hot seat here, sir?
Yes.
All right. Well, question number 1, Joe, take it away.
Here we go. Haro, who is the one person who has had the most substantial impact on your business and why?
His name is Glenn Ransom, and that was my sales manager from the book business. And it's not just my business, but it's also my personal life, my family, my faith, all of those things. He was a mentor holistically in all those areas.
That's amazing. I love it. Question number 2, what is the most impactful book on your business?
You've
mentioned like 7. So
yeah, that changes over time. I don't know if I can hold it to 1, but in the recent 2 or 3 years, Profit First.
Great.
I would put Millionaire Real Estate Agent in there. I would put The Road Less Stupid in there. I would put Why Business Matters to God in there. But most impactful on my business last 2 or 3 years, Profit First.
Awesome. Thanks.
Third and final question for today, Haro. This is the All In Podcast, where we encourage and challenge our listeners to go out there and take immediate, massive action. So my question for you is, what do you recommend and suggest to our listeners to go do right now today to start moving the needle forward as it pertains to profitability in their business?
This is going to sound like a crazy question, the crazy answer, because it doesn't sound like it answers what you're asking. However, what I find is a lot of people ask my advice for what they should do. And what I find in that conversation is I ask them, well, where do you want to go? And most of them don't have a well-articulated answer to that or clarity around that. So I'd take you back to the movie Alice in Wonderland. And Alice, the Cheshire Cat, she comes up to the Cheshire Cat, she's like, where should I go? Or is it the guy with the hookah on the mushroom? I don't know. One of those two. It's like, which path do I take? And they say, I'm just gonna say it's the Cheshire Cat. The Cheshire Cat says, well, where do you want to end up? And she said, it doesn't much matter. And he says, well, it doesn't much matter which road you take then. So that's my answer. Like, where do you want to go? Based on that, I can tell you what the next action step is. But if you don't know where you want to go, it doesn't really matter what the next action step is.
Gaining clarity.
Yeah. I love it. Haro, I want to thank you for investing time with us and just walking us through. This episode's been like the word that's been coming to my head. It's been very cerebral. And I hope that our listeners just like pick up on the different parts of your story and how you've arrived at this place of like, I'll use the word health in your business, at least health to a greater extent than what previously was present in your business. And you've created a big business there in South Carolina. And I know you're impacting a lot of people's worlds. And so I just want to thank you for your investment in us and our audience today. Hey, another thing that I know, and just as we wrap up here, I mean, you mentioned Armenia. And I know that that's just like front and center on your mind these days. And a lot of our listeners probably don't even know like what's going on there. We don't do this a lot, wade into like cultural things. But if there was one resource that you could point listeners to on the struggle in Armenia right now, and where they could dig further into information, is there a specific resource that you'd give people?
Depends how much time they want to invest. I think the history of the Armenian people would help someone understand the why there's this current struggle. And there's two books that I would recommend. One is called The Burning Tigris. The Tigris is a river in Mesopotamia of old. But it refers to an event in 1915 called the Armenian Genocide, where the Ottoman Turks basically killed 1.5 million Armenians to wipe. Hitler referred to it basically as the blueprint for what he did. And Turkey does not acknowledge that event today. They deny it. So that is what sets the stage for what just happened, which was Azerbaijan, which is Turkish basically, going to war with Armenia. It's kind of a long story. So the next book to read is called The Black Garden by a guy named Thomas de Waal. And there was in Soviet era, Stalin gave a piece of land that was historically Armenian population, and gave it to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan again are Turkish and basically sworn enemies of the Armenians. So after the fall of the Soviet Union, Armenians and Azeris went to war of that enclave, who got to control it, and Armenians gained control not only of that, but 7 surrounding districts as a buffer. And for the last 26 years, it's been a tense ceasefire. Well, Azerbaijan has oil. Anyway, long story short, read Thomas de Waal's book, The Black Garden, and that lets you know. And then you can pretty much Google what happened. And there's some articles that are slanted in the wrong direction, and it seems confusing, but yeah, those are the two. And if you want to Google Armenian Wounded Heroes. It's been one of the things I've been giving too. And it's just to support the families and those who were injured in the fight. And there's probably over 2,000 Armenian soldiers dead. And I'm sure there's a lot on the Azeri side that are dead too. And I don't know much about raising money for them, but I do know about the Armenian side.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I know it's important to you, and we're going to link that up in the show notes. And thanks, man, so much for spending time. And that's one reason why I appreciate you and we admire you is you do go all in, even watching you from afar, in so many different arenas to create just a flourishing environment. And that's what this podcast is about. It's not like when you talked about business, it's sustainable for every stakeholder, including the community. And I think that's a really amazing focus. And so that's just one reason why we appreciate you. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you guys.
That's always about fun. All we have, guys. Guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the All In Real Estate Podcast. As always, go play all in.